Hi everyone, my name is Julian. I'm going to be discussing the illegal concealed carrying of firearms. To give some background information, concealed carrying of firearms is basically where you carry a small gun on your person publicly, maybe not publicly displayed based on your state laws, but on your person nonetheless for self-defense. My proposition is going to be that concealed carrying of firearms increases public safety. My claims that are going to back that up are going to be there is a need for self-defense by using firearms. States with more lenient concealed carry laws have lower crime rates. Law enforcement fails to provide self-defense. And my source of controversy going to be discussed is that concealed carry firearms are not a source of violence they're supposed to be. Going back to my first claim, that there is a need for self-defense by using firearms. A study by the National Institute of Justice showed that in a survey, half of 108,000 uses of firearms in self-defense yearly were completely legal with no penalties, meaning that so-and-so who was attacked and defended themselves were correct in defending themselves. And we can interpret that at least half of these people were completely right to defend themselves, and because this study actually goes back on itself and says that other studies pointed out that there were actually 2.5 million instances of self-defense yearly. And from that previous fact that half of those people defended themselves, I guess righteously, we can assume that this large number, at least half of these people, would correctly act to defend themselves. Some background before I get to my second topic, which is that states with more lenient concealed carry laws have lower crime rates. Some states completely outlaw carrying a concealed weapon. Some states, they require you to take tests to get a permit to get a concealed weapon, and some states have no laws against it at all, so you can just walk out the door with your gun. Going back to that, states like Illinois, which had 3,500 violent crimes per 100,000 residents in 2008, which do not allow concealed carrying of firearms at all, has the same amount of violent crime as Arizona, which has no restrictions on concealed carrying. And other states that had no restrictions on concealed carrying, such as Alaska and Vermont, actually had 1,000 less violent crimes per 100,000 residents in 2008. And this information is coming from the National Census Bureau. Moving on to my third point, that law enforcement fails to provide self-defense. Law enforcement can take upwards of 6 minutes, while a person could be killed or seriously wounded if action is not taken sooner. Firing a bullet obviously takes a lot less than 6 minutes. 6 minutes is not a lot of time. It's almost like it can be ended in seconds. An article from the Collegiate Times says that a man ran into a gas station, shot the owner, and fired at those in the gas station. But luckily, a permit holder who was allowed to carry a concealed weapon could subdue the man. Moving on to my fourth point, in Texas, back to my fourth point, concealed carry firearms are not a source of violence. In Texas, 0.15% of all assaults with deadly weapons were performed by permit holders. I wish I could give you more information, but not a lot of states keep track of that sort of thing. And 4B, I believe I actually saved the wrong version of this, and that was supposed to say that while on average 60% of violent crime is committed with a firearm, and that is coming also from the Census Bureau. And so Texas is 0.15% of all assaults with deadly weapons performed by permit holders, demonstrates the responsibility of those who carry a concealed weapon. And so, once again, my proposition is that concealed carrying of firearms increases public safety.
All right, we've got a pretty good start. You have a clear statement of the proposition, an excellent layout of the secondary points. The last point, the fourth point, that I didn't really hear much argument on when you got to it, was really a rebuttal kind of issue, and so you preview it but don't really develop it in the body of the speech. The internal signposting is very clear, so as you get to each point, I know exactly where you are in the speech. So organizationally, you're doing fine. It's the evidence and the explanation of the evidence in the body of the speech that needs a little bit of development. I think you do an okay job kind of explaining the concept, but proving that concept, some of the data is very conclusionary. For instance, you make this comparison between Illinois and Arizona and some statistic, and I don't know how I'm supposed to interpret that. What inference am I supposed to draw from that? The fact that they have relatively comparable crime rates, well, does that mean that having a concealed carry law doesn't have an impact on the crime rate? I thought that you were saying it has an impact, but it has a positive impact on the crime rate. I would think Arizona's crime rate, for instance, would be substantially lower per person. Maybe that's a way of measuring it, but that's not really what the evidence says, or at least it wasn't what it sounded like it said in your argument. On the third point, for instance, you have an example, but you rush through that example. We don't really get much explanation of what happened, and we don't get a source citation for that example about the guy in the gas station who was able to shoot the person or fight back against the person who came in and shot at a whole bunch of other people. It sounds like a pretty good case of somebody carrying a concealed weapon that was able to either stop or prevent further crime that's going on here, but that's the only evidence that you have on that point. It's not cited very clearly, and making an inference from a single example is, I think, a little bit problematic. The strongest evidence that you have is the data that talks about the self-defense use of guns, and you estimate there are thousands and up to 2.5 million with what was one estimate of cases of self-defense on that. And I think that that's good information, although it needs to be developed a little bit more, because it does sound somewhat conclusionary. If you gave us a context for where that information came from, I think the argument would be a little bit more convincing. You've got plenty of time to bulk up on this. This is sort of like the lean, mean version of the argument, and if you only had 4 minutes, I'd say, okay, well, then you presented a reasonable 4-minute argument. But you had 6 minutes, and you only used 3 minutes and 54 seconds, so I'm just thinking there's a lot of missed opportunities here to fill in the argument and make it a lot stronger with the data that you could find. All right, thank you.